This is so class.
July 19th, 2026.
Nico Williams.
The World Cup final. Lionel Scaloni is trying to keep football's greatest trophy in Argentina. Standing opposite him is 65-year-old Luis de la Fuente, a man the Spanish press called the Federation's cheap option and a coach with no charisma. There was one little-known detail behind this meeting. When Scaloni was earning his UEFA Pro license in Spain, de la Fuente was one of his instructors. Now, the student and the mentor were facing each other in the most important match of their lives. His only job in senior club football ended with him being dismissed after just 11 matches. He first coached most of the future world champions when they were still teenagers. And during major tournaments, de la Fuente sleeps for only 3 to 5 hours, lifts weights at dawn, and lights candles in church before matches. Let's find out how a quiet coach from the wine-producing town of Haro developed the generation that led Spain to the World Cup. Luis de la Fuente was born in the small town of Haro, in the heart of the La Rioja wine region. I couldn't find any childhood photos of Luis because the de la Fuente family has always kept a very low profile, intentionally avoiding the spotlight. His father, Alberto, worked as a merchant seaman and supported Athletic Bilbao. Whenever he had the chance, he took his son to San Mamés. His mother, Berta, ran a small haberdashery shop in the town's central square, while Luis played his first football matches in the courtyard of his grandmother's house. But football was not the only spectacle that shaped his character. His father regularly took the boy to bullfights. Luis watched matadors step forward to face an animal that was stronger, faster, and capable of ending the fight with a single movement. Later, those qualities would become the foundation of his coaching character: respect for tradition, control of fear, and the willingness to endure pain. Interestingly, can composure be learned before you ever experience real pressure for the first time? At the age of 15, de la Fuente was spotted by legendary athletic player and scout Piru Gainza. Luis left Haro and moved to Bilbao to join the Lezama Academy. He played at left back, although at just 170 centimeters tall, he rarely looked physically imposing. His strengths were discipline, endurance, and the willingness to fight until the very last second. Under Javier Clemente, de la Fuente became part of one of the toughest teams in the history of Spanish football. Athletic won the league twice in a row, then added the Copa del Rey and the Spanish Super Cup. Luis later spent 4 seasons at Sevilla, returned to Bilbao, and ended his career at Alavés. In total, more than 400 professional matches. But behind that consistency was constant pain. Serious knee injuries required several operations. During rehabilitation, de la Fuente began studying anatomy, biomechanics, and strength training. He needed to understand how to preserve his career when his joints could no longer handle the strain. That was how iron entered his life. The gym gradually transformed from a method of recovery into a daily necessity. Even decades later, already in charge of the Spanish national team, de la Fuente continued training almost every day. He explained it simply: work, work, and more work. The ability to sacrifice yourself and endure pain, that is my main diet. Sport is my way of life. I would not be able to live without it. Later, we will see why the 65-year-old coach was still lifting weights during the World Cup, even while sleeping for only a few hours. So, de la Fuente already knew how to endure physical pain. Far more difficult was the moment when he was judged for the first time not as a footballer, but as a head coach. It took just 11 matches. After ending his playing career, de la Fuente coached Portugalete, Aurora, and the youth teams of Sevilla and Athletic. In 2011, he received his first serious job in senior football, taking charge of Deportivo Alavés. Imagine this. After just 11 matches, he was sacked. Luis later admitted that he had not been ready. He was used to Javier Clemente's hard school and tried to manage players through discipline and pressure. At Alavés, that approach did not work. After being dismissed, de la Fuente began speaking more with players, explaining his decisions, and taking each person's character into account. Interestingly, he never received another major opportunity in club football. In 2013, Luis joined the structure of the Spanish Football Federation, and began working with the youth national teams. And this raises a logical question. Why was the development of the country's best young footballers entrusted to a coach who had just been dismissed after 11 matches? We will return to that. In 2015, Spain won the U19 European Championship under his leadership. That team included Unai Simón, Mikel Merino, Dani Ceballos, and Marco Asensio. 4 years later, De La Fuente won the U21 European Championship. Then, he brought home a silver medal from the Tokyo Olympic Games. Dani Olmo, Mikel Oyarzabal, Fabián Ruiz, Marc Cucurella, Martín Zubimendi, Pedri, and many other future senior internationals all passed through his teams. So, by the time he was appointed head coach of Spain, De La Fuente had already spent almost 10 years working with the younger generation. That is why, in December 2022, he arrived in the senior national team not as an unfamiliar specialist. He knew the players' characters and remembered how they reacted to pressure when they were still teenagers. But the list of familiar names explains only part of his success. To understand why the Federation trusted De La Fuente after his failure at Alavés, we need to look at how he treated young players, especially those whom the football world had turned into stars far too early. So, why did the Federation trust De La Fuente with the country's best young footballers after his failure at Alavés? The answer lies in the way he treated his players. Luis stopped seeing a footballer as nothing more than a position and a set of qualities. He studied their character, their reaction to pressure, and understood when to demand more and when to offer support. By the time he was appointed to the senior national team, he had already known Unai Simón, Mikel Merino, Dani Olmo, Oyarzabal, Fabián Ruiz, Cucurella, Zubimendi, and Pedri for many years. De La Fuente had seen them before the big contracts and millions of followers. That is why the players knew they were standing in front of a coach who did not need to prove anything with loud words. His approach is shown especially well by the story of Lamine Yamal. At Euro 2024, Lamine was 16 years old. Because of his age, he was not allowed to visit restaurants late in the evening with the senior team. De La Fuente ordered one member of the staff to stay with him at the hotel. At first glance, it seems like a small detail. But the teenager, who already had the entire football world watching him, was not left alone after matches. De La Fuente said about Yamal, "Lamine is an example of a polite, well-mannered boy with enormous talent, touched by God's magic wand. What amazes me is De La Fuente's ability to see him as both a superstar and an ordinary 16-year-old boy at the same time." Luis was also helped by his son Alberto, a professional sports analyst. He prepared video analysis of opponents for his father and worked alongside him for many years within the Federation. By the way, De La Fuente did not only teach footballers. When Lionel Scaloni was earning his UEFA Pro license in Spain, Luis was one of his instructors and methodological mentors. At the time, it looked like an ordinary episode from a coaching course. Years later, that connection would bring them together in the World Cup final. But first, in December 2022, De La Fuente took charge of Spain's senior national team. The players knew perfectly well who was standing in front of them. The press, however, saw a completely different man, a convenient candidate for the Federation, a specialist without a major club career, and, as journalists wrote, a coach with no charisma. In December 2022, De La Fuente replaced Luis Enrique as head coach of the Spanish national team. The press greeted his appointment coldly. He was called the Federation's cheap option, a convenient candidate, and a coach with no charisma. Luis responded, "If what people say about me is called a lack of charisma, well, I do not want charisma. We have proved that being a normal person works. You do not need to constantly provoke people in order to win." What surprises me here is how quickly he changed the team's style of play. Spain kept its control of possession, but began moving the ball forward more quickly. There were more vertical passes, early crosses, and attacks through the wings. In the basic 4-3-3 formation, Yamal and Nico Williams were given freedom to dribble. During attacks, the formation transformed into a 2-3-5, with 5 players stretching the opposition's defense across the entire width of the pitch. De La Fuente did not try to control every movement. He created a structure in which the players could make their own decisions. In 2023, Spain won the Nations League, the national team's first trophy in 11 years. A year later, the team won all 7 of its matches at the European Championship. Along the way, Spain defeated Croatia, Italy, Germany, France, and England. Let's return to the failure at Alavés. Those 11 matches taught Luis that discipline without trust does not work for long. With the national team, he demanded a great deal from his players, but spoke to them calmly and explained every decision. Faith remained an important part of his life. De La Fuente said, "I understand atheists because I feel the same way towards them. My faith is not superstition. I do not wear a lucky shirt. I simply pray because I believe." Before matches, he visits a church and lights candles. He asks for calmness and the strength to accept any result. By the way, have you ever wondered why a calm person is so often considered weak? After the Nations League and the European Championship, that label disappeared. But the World Cup was about to test the most important thing, whether De La Fuente's team could win the longest tournament of all, and overcome the coach Luis had once taught himself. Psst. Spain began the World Cup with an unexpected draw against Cape Verde, but De La Fuente's team improved with every match that followed. In the semifinal, Spain completely stopped a France team featuring Mbappe, Dembele, and Olise, 2-0. After the match, Luis said, "Today we played against one of the best national teams in the world. Unfortunately for them, they were playing against the best national team in the world." Now only Argentina remained. Interestingly, the final was De La Fuente's 50th match in charge of the national team, and standing opposite him was Lionel Scaloni, the coach Luis had once taught while he was earning his UEFA Pro license. So we return to the beginning of our story. The teacher and the student really did meet in the biggest match in world football. Argentina were trying to defend their title, but Spain controlled the game. Over 90 minutes, Scaloni's team did not register a single shot. Emiliano Martinez saved Argentina again and again, and then Enzo Fernandez received a red card. Well, in the 106th minute, Nico Williams won the battle after a cross from Pedro Porro, and substitute Ferran Torres scored the only goal of the final. Notice this, the victory was delivered by players who had not started the match. This was De La Fuente's system in action. Every player understood his role and was ready to enter the game at any moment. Let's also return to his training. During the tournament, 65-year-old Luis slept for only 3 to 5 hours, watched video analysis deep into the night, and went to the gym in the morning. The iron that had once helped him recover his injured knees was now helping him cope with the pressure of the World Cup. And the composure he had admired as a child in the bullfighting arena was needed in a final that went all the way to extra time. After the victory, De La Fuente reminded Marc Cucurella of his promise to get a tattoo of the coach's face. And during the celebrations in Madrid, the quiet coach with no charisma stepped out in front of the supporters and sang Julio Iglesias' Quijote. His club coaching career ended after 11 matches. He spent the next 10 years with Spain's youth teams, developing the players he would one day lead to the World Cup. So who created this championship-winning Spain? A talented generation of footballers, or the man who had known them since they were children?